He believed that the body could be made unbreakable, that strength could be preserved by gathering the breath of youth. Some say he slept with 100 virgins to do it, until the night the girls tried to kill him. Tonight, we open the vermilion doors of the main court and follow a rumor that refuses to die. The emperor who slept with 100 virgins to preserve his strength. Is it truth? Is it slander? Or something more revealing about power, fear, and the human ache for immortality? We'll move slowly and carefully. We'll explore the world that made the claim possible, the bedchamber arts, Taoist alchemy, and the politics of a court ruled through screens and whispers. We will meet the man at the center of it, the judging emperor, a ruler who fasted, prayed, and receded into ritual while his ministers bled on the stones outside. We'll walk the corridors of his inner palace. We'll linger at the edge of a dark bedchamber, and we'll stay through the night when a handful of palace women slipped a silk ribbon around the emperor's neck and pulled. By the end, you'll know why this story was told, what likely happened, and what it still means. Ready? Breathe in. The incense has been burning for hours. There is a particular chill inside the forbidden city after midnight. Lanterns soften. Courtyards grow vast and empty. Even the cicadas hush. In that hush, rumors bloom. Servants lean close. Eunuchs trade glances. And in the 16th century, one rumor eclipsed the rest, that the Son of Heaven preserved his vitality by bedding virgins, dozens at a time, night after night. 100 virgins. The number is part of the claim. A number smooth as a polished bead, easy to remember and impossible to verify. A number that sounds less like a tally and more like a symbol. In Chinese, 100 often means countless, a great many. It is the sweep of a brush, not a ledger entry. But it gives the rumor weight. It gives it a rhythm. The emperor who slept with 100 virgins, like a gavel beating out the syllables of scandal. Some sources say he did it to feed his yang, his masculine essence, with the een of young women. Some say he was counseled by Taoist adepts who promised that youth could be harvested from untouched bodies like dew from lotus leaves. Some say he simply indulged himself, that immortality was just a costume for hunger. You will hear these lines repeated in gossip manuals and court histories, in Jesuit letters, in modern retellings that cross oceans and languages. But the rumor has a gate at its center, and the gate has a name, Jiajing. The Jiajing emperor sits small on the page, slight, watchful, but he casts a long shadow. He ruled for 45 years, longer than most. He withdrew deeper than most. He believed, fervently, in rites, in talismans, in the correct alignment of things. He starved himself of meat for purity. He lost himself in prayers. Outside, the bureaucracy rattled. Inside, the incense curled. The floors were washed daily with vinegar and herbs. The girls did as they were told. What did a night in that world feel like? A perfume of sandalwood and cinnabar. The soft footfall of an eunuch's cloth shoes. Sleeves brushing lacquer. A pulse of fear when the curtain moves. The rumor ghosts these details. It says, he would not have grown old without their bodies. It says, the emperor slept, and each morning he rose surprisingly light. But rumors need scaffolding. They need beliefs strong enough to hold them up, and a ruler whose habits invite belief. To understand the 100 virgins, we need to step into older rooms, the rooms of the bedchamber arts. And so we begin not with a man, but with an idea. Long before the Ming, before our emperor's breath, before the ribbon, there are the old texts. In Chinese, they're called the arts of the bedchamber, Fangzhong Shu, manuals dressed in quiet language, swaying between medicine and magic. On their pages, you will find conversations between a curious emperor and a sage woman. Sometimes she's called the plain girl, Sinu. Sometimes the mysterious girl. Sometimes just a voice in the dark. These texts speak a language of elements. Yin, and yang, breath and essence, the body as field and furnace. They teach, do not waste your essence too quickly. Essence becomes breath, breath becomes spirit, spirit sustains life. They suggest techniques of restraint, of pacing, of stillness and timing, that their authors say will strengthen the heart and soften the bones. To some readers, they are poetic exercises in patience. To others, especially when filtered through anxious court culture, they become prescriptions, methods to harvest life from youth. Here, the belief deepens. Virgins are pure reservoirs of Yin, like new snow on mountains. Their bodies have not been opened. Their blood is new, their breath unentangled. In certain strands of Taoist alchemy, the absorption of that purity, through contact, through proximity, through sexual intercourse without ejaculation, is said to nourish the male practitioner's yang. Gather the yin to supplement the yang, some say, kain bayang, and always, tucked behind the language of harmony, is the fear of decline. Old men do not like winter. Alchemy leans in. In some courts, the furnace blazes. Wide-an, outer alchemy, promises that gold and cinnabar, carefully transformed, will yield pills of long life. Nighten, inner alchemy, promises that breath and stillness, guided by talismans and diet, can refine the body from within. The imperial laboratory becomes a theater of glittering powders and broken bodies. Mercury shines like water. Cinnabar glows red as a wound. The emperor sips. Officials vomit in the hallways. It seems wild from a modern chair, but remember, every age has its health cults. Every age invents rituals to slow the clock. The bedchamber arts are not, in themselves, only cruelty. In quieter hands, they're gentle, a way to learn the shape of breath to quiet the heart. But when yoked to the will of an emperor, to a machine that can draft girls by the hundreds, they become something else, a system. The Son of Heaven does not sleep like a village man. His bed is a site of cosmic labor. To keep the world aligned, his ministers would say he must be aligned. If the rites aren't correct, harvests fail. If the prayers falter, floods come. If the emperor sickens, the realm tilts. In this logic, the private becomes public, the bed becomes the border. And in that moment, the rumor that he slept with 100 virgins to preserve his strength begins to feel less like gossip and more like inevitability. Some sources say emperors across dynasties flirted with such practices. They name the Tang court here, a Song ruler there. They gesture at the Mongol Khans, at others in far-off courts with the idea of purity as medicine caught fire. Many of these claims are swollen by hearsay. Numbers surge in repetition. But the pattern is real. Men who rule enjoy rituals that promise they will rule longer. In the 16th century, this belief found its most stubborn carrier in a slender boy elevated beyond expectation. He will inherit the bedchamber texts and the alchemical furnaces. He will inherit a bureaucracy he distrusts, and he will decide that purity and distance are safer than conversation. His name is Zhu Hotsong. We know him as the Jiajing Emperor. We turn now to the boy who became a ghost behind screens. He was not supposed to be emperor. Zhu Hotsong was born in 1507, far from the great capital, into a side branch of the imperial clan. He grew up in provincial quiet, local mountains, local air, the rhythm of a prince's small court. In 1521, the Zhengda emperor died without an heir, and the line creaked searching for a successor. The ministers chose Zhu Hotsong, a cousin, young, small, untried. They brought him north like a precious artifact. He rode through towns that stared. A curtain dropped behind him. The doors of the capital closed. His era name, Jiajing, means auspicious tranquility. It reads like a promise, like a wish stitched in a silk to steady an anxious heart. He took the throne at 14. Ministers surrounded him with etiquette. Confucian tutors shaved his sentences down to virtue. But the boy had his own ideas. Very quickly, he decided he would not be the adopted child of the previous emperor's father, as tradition required. He would honor his own father as emperor posthumously. It was not just a mood, it was a revolution inside a ritual. The court snapped. What followed is known to historians as the Great Rites Controversy. Think of it as a war fought with ancestral tablets, and then with whips. Senior officials wrote in elegant prose. The new emperor read, expression unreadable. He would not bend. He had the final say. Dozens of ministers were flogged in the court, some fatally, others were exiled. The message was scarred into skin. This emperor would not be ruled by the scholar's ink. After that, Jiajing drifted away from them. He mistrusted their doctrines, their constant insistence that a good ruler must sit daily on a hard throne and listen to quarreling men. The emperor chose another road. He withdrew. He cultivated distance as if it were crop. He ate plain food. He washed and purified as if he were a temple bowl. He sacrificed, performed rites, and built new altars. He invited Taoist adepts to palace halls and asked about longevity. He strained his days through rituals until they fell soft and quiet. The court could barely see him. Years passed without a proper audience. Paper petitions piled on jade trays and were returned with red-inked notations from somewhere inside the maze of palace buildings. A long reign can look like strength from far away. Up close, it can look like stalemate. While the grand secretaries managed foreign caravans and border wars, while pirates troubled the coasts, the emperor polished talismans and learned to hold his breath. To say that Jiajing was only a recluse is wrong. He had tastes, pleasures, wrath. He stripped favored eunuchs of their power. He favored others. He loved refinement, painted jars, calligraphy, ritual precision. But the center of his life was neither administration nor art. It was a personal project to protect and enlarge his vitality, to cleanse his inner world, to draw his circle so tightly that nothing corrupt could cross. That circle, unfortunately, closed over the bodies of girls drafted into his service. He may not have invented the rumor that the emperor slept with 100 virgins, but he built the palace in which it thrived. And so we step over the threshold of the inner quarters. The inner court is a world of its own, a city within a city, a map of power drawn in silk. There are gates named for virtues, courtyards patterned like chessboards, and dormitories humming with adolescent fear. The people inside are almost all women and castrated men. Between them moves a controlled weather system of orders, gifts, punishments. From time to time, the state drafts girls. They come from villages and the families of minor officials, described as select women. Most are teenagers. Many, inevitably, are virgins. They are examined for posture, skin, quietness. Some cry the night before they leave. Some don't have time. The selection lists are long, and the savvier families do what they can to avoid the draft. But the machine keeps humming. The capital's appetite is an institution, dressed as ritual, explained away as necessity. Inside, the girls are sorted and trained. Some will scrub floors and carry water. Some will serve at altars. A very small number will be elevated, named, adorned, and placed in the imperial path. A humbler group is rotated closer to the heart at night, like moths skimming a lamp. Eunuchs keep ledgers with neat brushstrokes. Movements are scheduled. Visits are recorded or, just as often, erased. A room's importance is visible in the polish on the threshold. Behind this choreography stands an idea that in Jiajing's palace is not just belief, but habit. The emperor's strength is a thing that can be guarded, replenished, stored. A doctor looks at his tongue. An adept draws talismans. Cinnabar goes into his tonic. Cinnabar, which glows a deep chemical red, and promises to prolong life even as it seeds poison in the blood. Some sources say that in certain years the emperor's alchemists demanded materials only young girls could provide for their elixirs, pure bodily substances sacrificed at the edge of reason. Others say that this was slander invented by later writers to blacken his name. What is certain is that the palace recruited girls in numbers that make the heart cold, and that Jiajing's pursuit of purity took a toll on the bodies of others. Now, to the bedchamber. The rumor about 100 virgins paints a simple picture, an emperor laboring through an endless procession. The reality of court life is stranger. If you stand outside the bedchamber, quiet, respectful, not breathing too loud, you hear ritual. The emperor purifies himself. He fasts. He pays respect to a deity. He drinks a small bitter cup. He breathes slowly until his pulse settles. Then the curtain moves and a girl enters. Maybe two, sometimes more. Candles flare, are snuffed, flare again. The eunuchs stand like statues. No one speaks of it in daylight. The 100 is exaggeration, yes. Human bodies have terms, even imperial ones. But the mechanism behind the number is the point. In some bedchamber arts interpretations, a man can preserve his essence by spreading his encounters over many partners, limiting his own release while, ideally, encouraging theirs. It is the technique of a farmer spreading a thin layer of water over many fields. In the court's hands, it becomes schedule, policy, then rumor. Some sources say Jiajing rotated through girls in a religious pattern designed to benefit his yang. Others say the emperor's indulgence had no ritual frame, that the later Taoist language was a blanket thrown over common appetite. The surviving records are tidy when they should be messy, and messy where we want them clean. Whatever the exact method, it is impossible to miss the machinery of it all. Youth drafted, fear harnessed, prayers prayed in rooms that emptied others of their voices. Even imperial favorites, women elevated to ranks, given names and titles, were caught in this rule. They were watched closely, their bodies considered both sacred and expendable, like incense sticks in a temple, burned for the scent. And then, after years of this, the palace cracked open. The girls pulled back. Our next step is into the darkest room of the story. Some nights start quietly and end with metal on stone. The conspiracy that historians know as the palace plot of 1542 began in whispers. A handful of palace women, maids and junior consorts, decided that if the emperor would not protect them, they would protect each other. Their world was a locked courtyard. Their lives were a ledger of compliance. Some had been beaten. Some had watched younger girls taken to the inner rooms under pretense of medicine and emerged drained. Some sources say anger was their motive. Others say desperation. Still others, a wild combination of both. They chose a night when the calendar was calm, when the emperor would retire with minimal attendance. They waited. Lanterns softened. The eunuchs stepped back like reeds in a pond. The emperor laid down. The air was thick with the smell of sandalwood and human breath. And then the girls moved. The plan, as later recounted in official histories and in more fevered popular tales, was simple. They would strangle the emperor as he slept. Silk is strong. Hair ribbons are stronger than they look. The knot can be pulled fast. The work is quiet and quick. It slipped a ribbon round his neck. Hands pulled. Another hand covered his mouth. Another hand steadied another hand. In some tellings, a woman recited a prayer under her breath, either to a Taoist god or to a goddess of mercy, words to steel her trembling heart. But simple plans die faster than complicated ones. The emperor woke, choking. Someone fumbled. A girl lost her nerve and, panicking, fled the room to call for help, thinking perhaps she could explain herself as saving the Son of Heaven from an attack. Strange logic born of terror. It condemned them all. Eunuchs rushed in. The girls were seized. The knot was cut. The emperor's color returned slowly. The night ended with bright dawn and open eyes. What happened next was brutal. In imperial law, raising a hand against the emperor is the one crime that erases mercy. Those involved in the attempt were questioned and executed. Some sources say by slow slicing, a punishment designed to write pain into the air. Others were strangled. Families tied to the plot by the thin cords of palace gossip were punished or exiled. The palace tightened. The emperor withdrew deeper than before, now with a vivid new reason to distrust the bodies around him. After this, the rumor about 100 virgins took on the sheen of moral story. It was no longer just a salacious whisper about knights. It was a tale about fear breeding violence and violence breeding fear again. The plot's details, names, counts, precise dates shift depending on whether you read official Ming records compiled under the next dynasty, literati diaries, or later moralizing histories. Some sources center the cruelty of alchemical demands on the palace women as the cause. Others suggest that court factions used the scandal to shift influence, blaming rivals of the emperor's favorites. A few airborne claims bloom further still, pinning poisons and black magic on anyone the writer disliked. In the wash of it all, one thing stands. A group of women decided that if no one else would protect them, they would risk the impossible. The ribbon failed. Their voices are mostly lost. The emperor lived 14 more years. And after that night, the legend grew teeth. We began with a rumor. Now we examine how rumors survive and why this one echoes across centuries and borders. Why do chroniclers tell us that a ruler slept with 100 virgins to preserve his strength? Because the phrase is sticky. It signals decadence and magic in the same breath. It turns control over other bodies into a number that feels like prophecy. In Ming and Qing histories written after Jiajing's reign, moralizing frames are common. The compilers knew what later scholars would point out, that a long reign of ritual and withdrawal left the bureaucracy bruised, the borderlands tender, the succession tense. To explain this, and to warn future readers, they draped the emperor in scandal. It is easier to hate an old man in a Senate room than to untangle the 1,000 decisions that kneecapped reform. The inner palace, its workings largely invisible and thus easy to imagine, became a stage on which to display the wages of vice. Numbers ballooned. 100 virgins became a shorthand for a system. Drafts of young girls, elaborate bedchamber rites. A ruler who believed his essence could be fed with youth. Some specifics are likely true. The drafts, the training, the emphasis on purity, the alchemists with their red powders, the long years of minimal public audiences. Some claims should be read with eyebrows raised. Nightly parades of 100, the idea of a literal tally, the precise ritual geometry of these encounters. It is hard to imagine where such records would come from. And if they existed, harder to imagine that they would survive the purges after the palace plot. The frame of purity as medicine is not unique to Ming China. The medieval and early modern worlds, across cultures, repeated variations of the virgin cure. In some places, it attached to venereal disease. In others, to aging, as a way to drink from fountain of youth made of other people's bodies. The specifics vary, the shape persists. You can find, for example, medieval rumors about rulers in the Islamic world who fathered hundreds of children and took young wives to invigorate their bodies. Persian kings with vast harems. Ottoman sultans with rooms of concubines. Central Asian khans described as choosing dozens of maidens nightly by odd travelers. Many of these tales were embroidered by outsiders, by emissaries who needed to flatter, by enemies who needed to mock, by merchants who needed a good story to sell. Marco Polo's travels, when it reaches the world of the khans, reads like a tapestry stitched with wonder and exaggeration. Some details ring true, others ring like bells in empty air. China had its own native pattern. The Yellow Emperor himself, in legend, sought counsel from women about the arts of the bedchamber. Later chroniclers read cosmology into sex and sex into cosmology. Ming emperors were sometimes framed in relation to these old myths, faithfully, ironically, or venomously. Jiajing made himself a useful target. He truly did seek longevity. He truly did draft many girls. He truly did, by all sober accounts, withdraw from the daily duties of rulership into private rituals and the Council of Adepts. If a story about 100 virgins each night was going to attach itself to any ruler, it would choose him. Then came the Jesuits, writing for audiences in Europe hungry for wonders about the East. They described mandarins and rites, astronomy and floods, painted porcelains and the structure of the court. They also repeated, sometimes, what they heard in Beijing's stew of informants, whispers about emperors who treated sex as medicine. With each retelling, the line about virgins traveled further. It shed its context like a snake sheds its old skin. By the time it lands in modern books and videos, 100 virgins is no longer a rumor about a specific palace. It is a meme about all empires, about the ways power turns bodies into tools, about how a ruler hugs youth to fend off night. So, did he really do it? Did he truly sleep with 100 virgins to preserve his strength? The careful answer is, he lived in a world that made that rumor plausible, and in a life that made it useful. He likely practiced bedchamber arts guided by Taoist belief. He maintained a harem large enough that a schedule of rotating partners was not only possible, but likely. He believed that one could preserve yang by restraint and by contact with yin. He sought longevity in tonics and rituals that made alchemists wealthy and exhausted the palace staff. He hurt people by doing it. The exact number, 100 on a given night, is probably rhetorical, a moralist's neat brushstroke. But the essence of the claim, that his pursuit of strength consumed the youth of others, is true enough that the rumor lives. After the 1542 plot, Jiajing withdrew even more. He continued his rituals. He rarely met his ministers in open court. Reports suggest periods of ill health punctuated by quiet recoveries, as if he were a man made of wax who melted and refroze. He died in 1567 at 60. Some sources say that the very tonics he trusted, cinnabar-rich, mercury-laced, shortened his life even as he sought to prolong it. If so, the bitter irony is complete. To tell a story only as scandal would be a mistake. He reigned for nearly half a century, long enough to leave behind more than the shape of a bed. He reorganized certain rituals that would persist. He protected aspects of the imperial cult with zeal. He set patterns of imperial absence that would haunt later Ming politics. But the rumor remains the most portable part of his legacy. It has crossed centuries to arrive in our headphones because it packages a truth that is older than Jiajing and more troubling than any one man's appetite. That when power seeks to stop time, it asks someone else to pay. This is where we leave him. Not in a bed, but in a room laced with incense, protected by screens piled like waves, listening to the scratch of a brush outside his door. He breathes in. He believes. He is not the first. We followed a whisper into the inner palace and came back with a shape. Not a number, but a pattern. A ruler who wanted to preserve his strength. A world where purity was property. Girls drafted into a life they did not choose. A night when, for a brief, terrible moment, the weakest reached for the strongest, silk against skin, and failed. Some sources say he slept with 100 virgins each night. The careful record says he built a life where that sentence made sense. If this quiet walk through rumor and ritual resonated with you, stay with the channel. There are more veiled rooms to open, more myths to read slowly until they give up their secrets. Share this with someone who loves history's strange intersections of belief and power. And tell me in the comments, which palace door should we knock on next?